Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 921. My opponent started off with d4 and I went d5. And he went knight f3 here. That's second choice, but a flexible move. He can still play a number of different systems. And I go knight f6, also a flexible response, waiting to see how white wants to set up. And now white can continue with c4 here, going for a queen's gambit. And it can even play with a Catalan with c4 and g3. Interesting ways to play. Or you can play for a Kala system with e3, but he chooses the London system with bishop f4. And I usually reply with c5 here, but I played that move a lot and sort of getting tired of those positions, so I've been looking for other ways to play. So I've been experimenting with this idea, bringing the bishop out early. Let's see, he went c3 here, and then playing e6. So just get this solid pawn chain, leave the c-pawn back, because actually my idea is to castle queenside, or keep the possibility open of castling queenside. So I leave the c-pawn back, and let's see, if he had played e3 here, for example, I would have gone bishop d6. And then, well, one way of continuing is like this, bishop g3, and then h5. I think it's not especially great right here, but this is kind of the general idea. So I'm going to castle on the queen side after it's developed, and I'm going to open up lines on the king side for my rooks, and that's my plan. And if allowed, I'll use this h-pawn to harass the bishop and force a trade without opening up the h-file to white's advantage. So that's kind of the idea that I've been playing with. Didn't get a chance to show the whole thing, but when I got the first few moves in. Anyway, he goes knight h4, and we're just out of any normal opening book. Here there's a very interesting line that I did not consider, but the chess engine points out bishop e4. Often the move f3 is a way to chase that bishop off of that e4 perch, and so it just seems to waste a move. But in this case, f3 fails, and so it's a nice tactical sequence here. If you want to pause the video here, see if you can figure out what's wrong with that f3 move. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. If he played f3, I need to move this bishop with tempo to set up a tactic. So I can take the knight over here. And then here's the tactic. The tactic is knight to h5, and it's a double attack. Queen hits the knight, and the knight hits the bishop. And now, if the bishop just retreats, then the queen will take the knight with check, and I'm a piece up. And the knight can't move to defend the bishop. And there's no piece. Well, you know, if a pawn defends the bishop, you can take the bishop off and then take the knight, because the pawn will be overloaded. Yeah, there's no way to defend both of them. And if the queen, if the bishop drops back to defend the knight, then the move bishop to e7 here traps that knight. That knight can no longer be defended. It's attacked twice, defended once, can't bring any more defenders in, and it's only got 4 squares to go to. And there's no quick counterattack on my knight either. So the bishop is blocking the pawn, and the pawns are blocking the queen. So this just wins a piece. So that's kind of cool. So if I had noticed that, I might have been tempted to play bishop e4. That's the best move there. Anyway, I just dropped my bishop back to g6. He took, I took, and he brings his piece out. So this is a position which is good for black. I'm going to castle to the queen side. I'll have an open h-file. It's not a huge advantage, but you know, it's sort of like white gave the opening advantage to black. I have a slight edge for most of the next for the next sequence of moves here. So I play bishop e6. He goes ahead and trades. There's no big mistakes in these moves. Everybody's doing kind of normal stuff here. And he brings his queen out to try and harass my loose pawn over here, and I just castle queenside, which is what I intended. He played e3, and I played knight e4. The chess engine, by the way, would actually take a move out and play king b8, but knight e4 is not a bad move. And he goes a4. a4 is probably a mistake. a4, a5, because he ignores what's going on the king side, and he never castles. So at this point, white's position starts to go downhill. Let's see. He played a5, and already I could get a big advantage by just playing g4 immediately. There's actually nothing to be afraid of here. I can just push the pawn and he can't easily get in on the light square. So that would be good for me. But I decided to take a move out and block. He played rook a4, so he gives me another chance to play g4, and definitely have a winning edge at this point. He played knight e5. I took. So I'm picking up a pawn here, but I just have this better position too with his exposed king and all. Played rook b4, and I played knight d6. So knight d6 was actually a mistake. The best move here is rook takes h2, which of course I saw. I'd been setting up this rook takes h2 tactic for a couple moves now, and I was planning to play it, and I did play it later. But right here is good. First of all, if he takes right away, I take, and there's no big follow-up here. I'm just a piece up. His queen can check me again. I can just walk away, or yeah, if he checks on the dark squares, I can block with my queen or the knight. So yeah, there's just nothing here for white. There's no attack. So you know, I was just a little bit afraid there was an attack there. Let's see. So after I take, he probably needs to take. I take. He can once again come in here with check. But I can bring my queen in here to g1 and threaten the f2 square. And you know, he can throw in a check or two, but eventually his queen is going to have to come back and defend on f2 here. And let's see, what's the material? Well, in this case, the material is about even, right? He has a rook, a knight, and a queen. A rook, a bishop, and queen. I have a rook, a knight, and queen. But his king is all exposed here, and I have the attacking chances. So anyway, this is also winning for black. So that's the way I should have played it. Let's back up. Okay, so he played rook b4. I played knight d6 to defend. But as he showed, he actually had a clever tactical idea here. He takes, I take. I could have avoided this tactic and blocked this way. Knight b5 might have been, well, it was slightly better according to the engine. This is actually still okay for me, but it starts to get playable for black around here. So I was winning up to that point where I should have played rook takes h2. After knight d6, white is in the game. Black is still better, but he needs to. Well, I guess this is the mistake where he can now equalize after rook takes h2. So I should have played king instead of rook h2. I should have played king here to d7. He takes, and then play queen e4. Not bothering with that measly pawn, but setting up this threat to win the rook, and also looking at this pawn, and also looking out on the queen side to defend over here. So I'm the exchange up in this position, and this is still winning for me. So I take back what I said. I think even after that, this little trick here, black is still winning, because ultimately white has to give up the exchange. But after rook takes h2, oddly enough, now this is where white could equalize. Let's see. He throws in queen takes b7 check. That's okay. King d7. He throws in bishop b5 check. That's all right. But here he really needs to just take that rook off. And then this is a line that leads to almost equality. And the key move here is g3. This blocks my queen's defense of the c-pawn, and the rook can't defend it because the bishop is covering these squares. I don't want to give up the exchange. The queen's covering that square. So I have to run with my king, and I lose another pawn. And it seems here that even though white's king is a bit exposed and he's down the exchange, he has a couple pawns over here, and it seems to be a fairly balanced position, maybe just a slight edge for black. So anyway, that was this move rook f1 instead of trading. That was how white could equalize. Here he's just losing again. And the play is pretty simple. I just drop my rook back to defend, and I enjoy being a pawn up. He's got this passed pawn, but he can't quite push it through. We'll look at that. He pushes a6. I bring my rook over. He gets the queen out of the way, and I lift my rook up to harass the queen and allow my other rook to come in. He goes queen c5 check, and I run with the king here. Actually, the simplest defense is this way, and that would have been pretty much game over. I don't know how he can even avoid the queen trade. Yeah, he doesn't have a square he can go to that defends the bishop, so you'd have to give up more material to avoid a queen trade. And with the queens off, it's an easily winning endgame. So that's the fastest win, but this is also winning. King here. Let's see, he brought his king up, played my rook over, and he played rook a1. Actually, I was a little bit worried here about the move a7, but it turns out I can just block with my rook. He can bring his rook over, and once again I can play this queen d6 move, offering the trade of queens, and everything is under control here. So it appears there was nothing he could really do with that pawn. Anyway, after rook a1, he's giving up the bishop, and well, he goes for some trades here. He figures he will trade off the rooks and queen this, which is what happened. He takes, I take, but he's given up too much to accomplish this. And in fact, after this check, the king really should have come forward. The king went back. And here I have a forced mate, if you want to look at it. See if you can find a quick mate here. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. One of the commenters in the previous video pointed this out already. Queen to h2 is mate. There's no way of stopping it. The king can't escape. The queen's just coming down here. The king can't move any closer, and it can't get away. And there's no pieces that can interfere. Queening this pawn doesn't matter. So that's just a mated one. Anyway, I missed that, but I played over here. This is still winning. He queened. Let's see, I went with queen c2, maybe not the fastest win, but I missed this one of these checks. Yeah, king g6, but finally queen h4. Yeah, that was a clever idea too. He brought his queen over here to defend on f2, but I just forced the rooks off like this, and then the king comes up. I give another check here, and of course the king has to go back to e1. After which I would bring my queen here. I think I pointed this out after the game. Just hold on to this pawn, and you know, I can just push these pawns forward, and my king is relatively safe here. So that is a win as well. But this is a simpler win, and I managed to get my mate after all. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.